Have you ever went somewhere and you look around and you say, you know what? This is it. These are my people. Hey, thank you for listening to the Kicking It with Doree podcast today. And this was a semi-planned, semi-unplanned podcast that I guess I'm going to call a bonus episode because I normally post bi-weekly when I am airing episodes. And now we've got one every week this month almost. So I wanted to talk about an awesome event that I went to this past weekend in the Concrete Jungle, New York. And it's called IDCon. It stands for ID, Investigation Discovery Channel Conference. And it was the fourth annual. I had never heard of it until a few months ago, actually. I was at a voiceover conference in Atlanta in March, and one of my sessions was an intensive that only had 12 people. It's just 11 other people in a class, and it went deep into what it takes to narrate a true crime show, which is one of the main reasons that I started doing voiceover, because I'm watching these shows and not only do I enjoy the show, but I'm also saying to myself, and my husband was saying to me at the time, you know what, you could do that. You have the voice for that. You have the gift for that. You could do that. I could hear your voice on one of these types of shows. And it's one of my dreams. So while I was in that session in Atlanta, there was another participant that told us about IDCon, which is a one-day conference for fans of the Investigation Discovery Channel, which from now on, I will say the ID channel that happens annually in New York City. So the ID channel actually started back in 2008. So it's been on for 11 years, which I didn't know that it was still that young, I guess. But it's the leading crime and justice network on television. I made a note of the date when I was in Atlanta and I heard from the other person. And then when I got home a couple of days later, I told my sister, because she's also an avid ID channel viewer, and she doesn't even like New York City. But immediately she got on her phone to find out when the tickets would go on sale on Eventbrite. And that morning the tickets went on sale. She bought the tickets. And there's also a Facebook group called Crime Obsession. And it's run by the Investigation Discovery folks. So that's another way to get the first notes on whatever's going on that channel. So we woke up really, really excited on May 18th. And we knew that we were going to meet two of our favorite ID channel personalities, which is the retired Sergeant Chris Anderson in Birmingham, who also was on the First 48 for a few seasons back in the day. And of course, the one and the only retired Lieutenant Joe Kenda, Homicide Hunter. So we took an Uber over. We were staying in Brooklyn, and we took an Uber over to Manhattan, and the line was wrapped around the building when we arrived around 8:45. The doors opened at 8:30 a.m. and we knew the day would go until 5. So we knew it was going to be a long day, but I had a feeling it would go fast. Not like your typical kind of conference, obviously, because, you know, this is a different kind of feel to it. We're not really there necessarily to learn like you would your typical conference, although there was a lot to learn and a lot to see and do, and it was fun. So the line was wrapped around the building, and, you know, everyone, you could feel the excitement. People were taking pictures of the building. I took pictures. Everyone was taking pictures. And the weather was pretty decent. When we got inside, the registration was pretty simple and straightforward. They didn't have breakfast, but they had small water bottles and coffee and tea available. And then when we went upstairs, there were different stations set up for different things. There's a link in the show notes to this episode that gives more detail about each of these little stations, if you will, but it was fun. And of course, there was a place where you could get your ID swag. They had cups and totes and t-shirts for sale. And I got to say, these t-shirts were reasonably priced. I was kind of surprised. It was $20 for a t-shirt. And normally when I go to a conference, I go to a lot of conferences, and I don't think I've ever seen any that low. So that was pretty cool. My shirt said that I was an ID addict. It's like, don't worry, I'm okay. You know, I'm just an ID addict. And also I've got some pictures of some of those different stations in the show notes for the episode as well. So the theme of this conference was Dangerous Minds. And you might recall, if you're of a certain age, like over the age of 30, that you probably remember a movie in the 90s called Dangerous Minds starring Michelle Pfeiffer, where she goes into a school and, you know, she's helping the inner city kids and all that. So the DJ played none other than the theme song to that movie, Gangster's Paradise by Coolio, which is pretty cool. And then Tony Harris came to the stage, and he was the host for the day. And he was pretty lit. He was excited. If you were not already excited, which I don't know how you could not be, he got you pumped up and ready to go. The next person to come out was Paula Zahn, and she couldn't stay because there was someone in her family that was graduating, but her show on the case has been on for over 10 seasons, and she just wanted to come and say hi to everybody. So that was pretty cool, even though it was great that she was able to, take a little bit of time out of her schedule to just drop by. The day was essentially made of 4 different panels of different people that we see on the ID channel. The first up was John Walsh and his son Callahan. They were on the first panel that started around 9:30. John explained that, of course, again, those of us of a certain age, we remember America's First Wanted from back in the day, and how amazing that show was that helped capture over 1,400 fugitives. And he talked about the fact that he is not a celebrity. He does not consider himself to be a celebrity. He was just an angry father of a son that he lost when his son Adam Walsh was kidnapped in the 80s and decapitated. And it was really, really interesting, all the wealth of knowledge that John has stored in his brain. Not only his drive, of course, to bring these fugitives to justice for other people's families and all the work that he's doing there with missing and exploited children, but he made the statement that he and his family were not victims. His son was the victim. His son was the one that was brutalized and that lost his life. He also talked about how he and his wife started their fight for justice, including what is now known as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, from their garage. They went on to have 3 more children, one of whom was there, of course, talking about his work, and Callahan leads the organization. John told many stories, including how America's Most Wanted came to be, and he quoted so many statistics that I could have never hoped to write or list for you here. There's no way I could even begin to, even if I had a pen and a piece of paper, write down everything he said. But just know that the work that he's done has made an incredible impact for people whose children have gone missing, whose children have been kidnapped. So if you want to donate your money or your time to this organization, go to missingkids.org. I can tell you right now, I could tell you one super simple way that you can help them is by, if you use Amazon, go to smile.amazon.com and select the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as your charity of choice. And Amazon will give a percentage of whatever you buy to that organization that you specify. And it's awesome. And they will keep tally of, your spending and how much has gone to them and how you're making a difference. So that's just a super simple, almost passive way of helping. But however, whatever level of commitment you want to give, you can go to missingkids.org to help. The second panel that came up featured Sheriff and former Detective Gary McFadden, who they call Homicide, as well as prosecutor Anna Siga Nicolazzi and defense attorney Fatima Silva. I met Gary and Anna Siga briefly in a meet and greet line, but Fatima left just a few minutes before I was able to approach her, so I didn't meet her. But they talked about how they kept a really good professional working relationship with each other, even though it might seem that they would be adversarial because of the different sides and angles that they have to hit the case from. When you look at TV, when you look at Law and Order, things like that, it's always like the prosecutor and the defense attorney are going at it, and, it's just all this political stuff. But for real, they have to work together. They all really want the same thing, which is for justice to be served. They want things to be done right. They want, the survivors to have closure as much as possible. And so they're all working really at the end of the day for the same cause. Anna Siga said something in her, I don't remember what at the end of each set of questions on each panel, because there's a different moderator for each panel, they would open up the floor for questions. There were mics set up in the room to approach, and, as long as they had time, you could ask questions. And somebody asked something that I'm not sure what the question was, but I noted what Anna Siga said in response. And she said that there are more good people in the world than bad, and that you can see the bad and notice it, but know there is more good than bad. And I think that that's really interesting because a lot of us may be inundated with seeing all the evil in the world, all the hate in the world, and just thinking that, there's no hope. But there really is. She told a story about how someone kind of guarded her in court. Somebody was going for the sheriff's gun, and, he could have done some terrible damage, and someone jumped in front of her to make sure that she wasn't hurt. So that's what prompted that quote, and I thought that was really good. Fatima said that the reason why she enjoys being a defense attorney, even though some people may think that her client did it, is because she says sometimes, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, sometimes a person doesn't have the best background. It could be a person of color, it could be someone with low income. Maybe they have a record that makes it look like, oh yeah, they probably did it, but they didn't do it. And it's a travesty, I'm saying this now, and I think that you all can agree. It's a travesty when an innocent person goes to jail, whether it's for 5 minutes or if it's for 50 years. When an innocent person goes to jail, it's horrible. It's horrible. I just can't imagine that I would go to jail for something I didn't do, and that I'm telling people I didn't do it, and there was nobody there to defend me, nobody to believe me, no evidence, whatever. That's horrible. If you value your freedom, then I know you got to agree with me on that. She also said, be respectful to law enforcement, but also know that you can assert your rights. We all have rights. We talk a lot about rights in this country, in the US, about how our rights are often violated or ignored, or we feel that they're violated or ignored, and that you have the right to assert your rights. Now, there were some lulls after this second panel for a couple of hours, and basically all of the attendees were split up into two groups, and we took turns eating lunch and attending the meet and greet. So that's what took so long, because you've got to give everyone a chance to get through the line and meet all their favorite people, as well as to get some food and eat. And I was nervous. I got to tell you, when I saw the people, I was like, wait a minute, are they sure they got enough lunch? Because I am hungry. Because by the time we didn't even get out of the meet, we went first in the meet and greet line, and the other group went to lunch first. And so I'm thinking to myself, do they have enough box lunches? It's like 1:00. Do you think that they still got some stuff saved for us? I kept telling my sister I was ready to go. I was ready to eat because it was after 1:00. I was hungry. I do intermittent fasting, and it's like not terrible for me to wait until after 12 to eat, but I don't know, maybe it was excitement. I don't know. I was just nervous about the food thing. I guess maybe because I'm a first timer, I was in the category of people that was able to go to the meet and greet first. And I got to tell you, this was definitely the highlight of my day. This was lit. I think I would have come to the conference even if I knew I wasn't going to meet people up close and get selfies. But you know what? Doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt to meet Joe Kenda in person. Really doesn't. Okay? This made my whole year so far. The line, though, was longer than a non-TSA pre-checkpoint at the Atlanta airport. But it was worth it. The first stop, after about maybe 30 minutes or so of waiting, was called the lineup. And they kind of had the wall set up like you're standing up for a lineup, for a mugshot. You could take a mugshot holding up a sign that said IDCon 2019. I don't have the picture in the show notes because I took it with my sister and I want to let her, be private and live her life and not worry about anything. So, but trust me, it was funny. And you still might see me tagged in it if you could find it on Instagram, but I'm not going to put it in the show notes. Anyway, it came up in black and white. It was really cute. It was cool. And then after that, there was a table for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And a man there gave us a folder with information about the organization and a luggage tag. Next up was a wall of offenders from the show In Pursuit with John Walsh. And a few of whom have been captured, but there were some cities that I live now or have lived in, and I was interested to see so many people that have been running from the law for so many years. Where I live in Virginia, there was a kid that killed someone in 2005, and he still hasn't been caught, apparently. That's a long time to just be running around living your life for free, and you took someone's life. So I'm really proud of the work he's doing, and I wish that he had been able to stay, but I understand he had something to do, and he couldn't stay. So next to the wall with all the fugitives picture, on the other side was a picture, like sort of like a poster canvas type deal of the In Pursuit and John Walsh's face. Then, as you finally get around the room and you make your way up through the wall of stars, there were volunteers in front of each person to take your phone and pass it along for all the selfies. And it appeared to run smoothly. Most of the stars stood up, but there were bar stool chairs for them because they were there for a long time. They needed to sit, as well as small bottles of hand sanitizer. I mean, yeah, they probably had to dry clean all their clothes when they went home, because how many people did they touch and hug that day? Who knows? First in line, though, was Chris Anderson. Fatima was with him for a while because they're on a show together called Reasonable Doubt, but she dipped out, so I didn't meet her. But Chris was there. Me and my sister were in heaven. We love Chris. Yes, Birmingham represent. So we were excited to meet him. It was basically the bookends that we were most excited to meet. The first person was Chris Anderson. The last person in line was Joe Kenda. So as I got my bearings, because we were both carrying things besides our phones, we would keep passing each other's stuff to each other. And then the volunteer would take our phones and so on and so forth. He asked me if I was having a good time so far. He seemed really genuinely personable, like a big teddy bear. I'm like, okay, yeah. Life is complete right here. Next in line was former FBI profiler Candace Owens. She was sitting and she seemed kind of stoic. So I don't know if she's just not a picture taking person, but I appreciate her being there. And we did speak. Everyone spoke to us. Everybody was cool. She, of course, is featured on the long running show Deadly Women. And the voiceover conference I was telling you about at the beginning of the show, the woman that narrated Deadly Women for many years, Lynn Zager, was our instructor. So that was pretty cool. I noticed that she really didn't smile with anyone. I was kind of looking a bit before as we were approaching the people. And I noticed that for every picture she took, she really didn't smile. It just wasn't her thing. It wasn't just me or something. Maybe she was tired. Who knows? Maybe she's introverted. But she was absolutely human and came alive when she was on the panel that was after lunch. So, she even made a few jokes during that Q&A. So, who knows? I don't hold it against her. My next photo was with Gary McFadden of Homicide, and then Derek Levasseur of Breaking Homicide, whom I didn't recognize. I didn't know about his show. I wasn't familiar with him. I think that he was actually the most talkative of everyone in line. And Tony Harris had told everybody, our instructions when we go in the meet and greet line, listen, don't be talking to all these people for 20 minutes. They got places to go, people to do. There's people behind you. Keep it moving. That's basically what he was telling people to do. And he didn't say it very differently from the way that I just did. So, I try not to, go off and, try to have a conversation with anybody out of respect. But next, I met Anna Siga Nicolazzi of True Conviction, and she remained seated. And then Rod Demery of Murder Chose Me, who was also very personable, and the granddaddy of them all, the homicide hunter himself, Lieutenant Joe Kenda, who happens to live within 30 minutes of me and my sister, and he grew up in my birthplace of Pittsburgh. So that was pretty awesome. After that, even though my life was complete at that point, we headed downstairs near where we checked in to get our box lunches. And the box lunches that were provided were just your average box lunches. One had ham sandwiches, one had hummus for the vegetarians, and one had roast beef, but I wasn't offered the roast beef one for some reason. I would have taken it. So I got the ham box, and it had a small, soft chocolate chip cookie, an apple, a bag of plain Cape Cod chips, and unfortunately, the apple was not sweet or ripe, so I couldn't eat it. But since I got my lunch so late, it was after 1 o'clock, I done killed everything else. I was so hungry. Then we found some more seats and sat back down. And while we ate and waited for the second group to do their meet and greet, there was some different music playing from different genres. It wasn't like all hip hop or all pop or whatever. But I noticed that there were a couple of things that I heard that were very inappropriate and questionable. Like one song in particular that I don't know, but I'm sure I could look up very easily. It was Chris Brown and Nicki Minaj, I believe. I kind of recognize their voices. And I heard the N word and the B word multiple times in that song. I just thought that was really like not appropriate for the DJ to play, even though we're all adults and, I'm Black. I've heard the N word before, but I'm just saying, I just feel like they could have did something with that. But anyway, while we were sitting and waiting, while we were eating our lunch, waiting for the other people to do the meet and greet, they played a couple of sneak peeks of some new shows that's going to be premiering in the next few weeks that are going to debut on the network in June. So the third panel, featured the detectives Chris Anderson, Rod Demery, and Derek Levasseur, as well as Candace DeLong. I don't regularly watch Rod's or Derek's shows, but now that I heard them speak and I know who they are and I've heard a little bit about the shows, I will watch them. I think Rod in particular, had a really harsh background because he lost his mom and his brother to violence. And he was asked by the moderator, like, why he's always so zen and so compassionate. His personality doesn't really waver. And he's so, like, always cool, calm, and collected. And he said that it's because of empathy that he has. He's a survivor and he deals with other survivors. And also, he's a man of faith and he believes that God has led him and he said that God led him to this career because it's his purpose. Next was Candace, and she said, I didn't know this, that before she joined the FBI, she was a psychiatric nurse, and she said she would have well done that for the rest of her life. She had no intentions in being in law enforcement. It was a very interesting story. And she also told a heartfelt story later on about the rescue of a boy that looked a lot like her son at the time, back in the 90s. And she almost cracked. I heard it. She showed a little bit of emotion. I told you, I know she's human. And then, this is my favorite question. This is my favorite part of the Q&A here. One woman said that she can literally spend all day long watching the ID channel if she doesn't have anything else to do. And she said, what does it say about me that I can do that? And we all just laughed and clapped because we all understand her. I told you, these are my people, okay? When you just go somewhere and like, these are my people. Yeah, she's my people. So Candace's answer was one that I feel is completely 100% accurate. She said that every show on the channel offers something educational. For example, the perils that some women will go through just to be loved. I'm talking about that a little bit on the next episode. I'm interviewing Trina Martin, who is a speaker and a podcaster, and we talk about, different things that women do when they have low self-esteem and they just want to be loved and paid attention to. So Candace said that sometimes a woman can fall in love with a sociopath and that person will use her to commit murder. There's so many stories like this. It's not just an isolated thing. You watch it sometimes and you're like yelling at the TV and you're like, oh my God, you're stupid or whatever. But, depending on your background, if you're needy, if, there's so many different reasons why, we can sit and judge why do people partner up with people that aren't good for them. But it all comes down to, that one thing. So after this panel was over, they showed different promos for different shows. And one of the shows that they played a promo of was Tamron Hall's show. And I love that show. That also has been on for a very long time. And so after the promo went off, it faded to black and somebody in the front started screaming. And I'm like, what's happening? And all of a sudden, Tamron Hall runs up on the stage and she's like, hey! And everybody just jumped up out their seats, started clapping and screaming, including myself, because I had no idea she was coming. I mean, she just had a baby a few weeks ago. Like, she's got like 20 jobs now. I didn't know that she was going to be showing up. So she looked great. She was still glowing. And not only is her show returning in the fall, but she's got a new daytime talk show that's debuting in the fall. So I'm really happy for her. She faced some rejection some years back with not being picked up. When she was on daytime before. And I think everything is working out for her now. So I really wanted to just give her a hug and tell her that we've got your back, Tamron. We've got you. This is her year, and I'm so happy for her. So once we recovered from that wonderful surprise, it was time for the grand finale, which was Kenda Confidential. And of course, the lovely Cathy Kenda made an appearance as well. She's so cool. I actually didn't realize it, but there's a picture that I put in the show notes that has Cathy sitting down doing some ink, some ID channel fake tattoo art. So you'll see that. Just look for the picture that says ID Ink, and that's her. Anyway, she was so entertaining. I mean, she could have her own show too, okay? Like, no doubt. Their dynamic together was hilarious. And she really is the reason that he's on TV. You know, wives often have to support their husbands and hold them down emotionally when they're doing their thing in any career, on or off screen. But you know, she told the story of how, you know, she suggested that, you know, he get on it. So it was her idea, and aren't we glad for it? The bad news that he gave was that his show Homicide Hunter is entering its 9th and last season. It starts in August because he's got, you know, so many cases to tell about, but he's exhausted all the ones that he feels are appropriate for TV. He said some of them are really disgusting, and some of them are like so super simple, like it wouldn't be anywhere close to a 1-hour show. So I can respect that, but the SVP of Investigation Discovery, Sarah Kozak, she said that a new show for him is in the works. We don't really get very many details about that just yet, so he won't be completely gone. I gotta tell you, I was kind of dreading when that panel ended. I knew that that was it for the day. And as we left, I was sad. I was sad it was over, but I was invigorated. And a lot of jokes were jealous. The Instagram and all the other social media was popping. They told us all to put everything on social media, make it trend or whatever. And I think there's going to be a few family members coming with me next year. That's all I got to say. I actually went out to take the stairs, and I was talking to my sister, and then I heard someone call out my name. And I looked over, and it was one of my running sisters from Atlanta that I haven't seen in probably like, I don't know, 3-4 years. And she was there all day with her sister, and she just so happened to notice me when we were leaving. I thought that was so crazy. Like, that is awesome. I think that is amazing. So I was glad to see her. Her name is Diane. Shouts out to Diane and her sister. I hope you guys got home safely and enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope that you enjoyed this little recap and maybe a couple of tiny little lessons that I was able to spill for you of my experience. If you want to see more pictures, you can go to my Instagram at Doree Allen, because the pictures that I posted on my Instagram are different from the pictures that I posted on the show notes. It's not repeating. And remember that you can see a full conference summary with the things that I kind of maybe glossed over a little bit in a link at kickingitwithdoree.com. All right. Check you out next week. Hope you enjoyed the bonus. Peace out. Thank you for kicking it with me today on the Kicking It with Doree podcast.